Hello everyone, it's Adrian from Bank Pirates TCG here, and I'm coming at you with another deck profile and full guide on how to play Eustass Captain Kidd leader. This deck is so fun, and I've had just a great time playing with it on ladder. It's one of the best and strongest decks in the game right now, that's why it's so popular. And the cards that you play are just, the interactions and the combos that they have with each other are just so fun to do. It's really satisfying winning with this deck, and that all starts with a leader card. One of the best leader skills in the game, Kidd will, once per turn during your main phase, if you rest through 3 Dawn and trash a card out of your hand, he gets to restand and attack again. So that is insane because it is relevant at all points in the game, early, mid, and late. Like, you can just swing into something like on board and then restand, swing into another thing on board. Late game, you're going to be like stacking your Dawn onto your Kidd, swinging multiple times with him. It's just, he gets really crazy. Having an effect like that on your leader is just so useful because you're going to have it at all stages of the game, and it's relevant at every point in the game. So that's the main reason why Kidd leader is so good right now. The cards you get are just so good. Green is like kind of a mid-rangey deck, so you could be more aggressive or more control-like depending on what your matchups are. And today I'm gonna kind of help you guys think through your card choices and kind of give you my reasoning for every card in the deck, when you should use it, what decks it's good against. So let's get right into it. To start off with our 1-drops, of course, we're running our chump blockers. We're running 4 Beige. This is just so you can protect like your cards on board for cheap. I won't usually block life with these cards because, I mean, you're a very defensive deck and very board control heavy deck, so you could afford to take a couple hits in the early game. Usually you want to use Beige to protect things, and I don't usually play him on turn 1 unless I have something that I want to protect, like a Bonnie or a Momonosuke, like one of your searchers. So, and he's just gonna be a very solid option for just protecting whatever you have on board. With this deck, controlling the board in the early and mid game is just so important because you want to poke your opponent out and control the board for the entire game so that eventually you could swing late game with your leader skill. That's usually how it goes. You never really run out of gas with this deck or run out of options because you have the Kidd leader skill. So protecting your board is very important, and running Beige is just a solid choice because he's just a cheap way to protect your high value cards, right? And then of course we are running our searchers for the deck. I run 4 Bonnie and 3 Momonosuke. I'm gonna talk about these cards together because they have the same effect. They both just say activate main. You may rest 1 Dawn and this card. So they basically cost 2 Dawn to search, but it's because they could get them multiple times, right? So they'll rest themselves, and then you'll look at the top 5 cards of your deck and grab a card depending on which one you're using. For Jewelry Bonnie, you're going to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and grab any Supernova type card. This includes events, stages, but I don't think there's any stages right now. And then you're going to bottom deck the rest in any order that you want. When you look at the top 5 cards in your deck, you actually want to order them in a way that your highest value cards are at the top, because you're going to get this effect off ideally a lot. So you are going to potentially see those cards again that you bottom deck, right? And then Momonosuke just says the same thing. You rest, you look at the top 5 cards, except it's with Wano type cards. And that's why I'm running him at a lower ratio. I know people like to run 4/4 for your searchers, but Momonosuke is only really valuable to me in the early and mid game, when a lot of my deck is playing towards the mid to late game, and all of those cards are Supernova cards, like the 5 cost and ups. So I really want to hit with Bonnie most of the time. So Momonosuke gets, I just run him at 1 less because he loses value as the game goes on, in my opinion. So, but yeah, These are the backbone of the deck. You always want to protect them if you can. And in the mirror match, you know, when these things are rested, always attack into them first. Like, you don't want your opponent to get multiple searches off this, because that's when the deck gets really crazy in advantage-wise, because green just can, as long as green has like an advantage on board and in hand, they're just going to run away with the game. So they're high priority targets to destroy in the mirror. All right, and then starting off with our 2-drops, we're going to run 3 Nekomamushi. This card is insane. It is one of your main removal cards and kind of just tech cards in general. He just says, on play, rest one of your opponent's characters that cost 3 or less. And this is such a simple but powerful skill, because he's going to let you deal with everything like Nico Robin and Okiku in the mirror match. He's going to let you kind of swing through higher value targets and get rid of them. Green does not have, like, you know, a lot of decks, they have like spot removal, like purple can just KO things out of nowhere. Blue can bounce things back to their hand. Green doesn't have a lot of that. They have to be rested for you to pop them. And then even then, like, they're at lower costs. So what you have to do most of the time is you have to rest something and swing into it. And that's where Nekomamushi really shines. And when we talk about like combos with the deck, I'm gonna kind of go into why he's so strong. But yeah, I mean, like, he's mainly really good against red and green, because they'll play something like an Okiku, a Robin, or a Vivi, and then you just rest it, swing into it, they don't get value, and then you get a 3k body on board, which is pretty significant sometimes, because in the mirror match, a 3k body means that they're probably not going to counter it when you swing at like a Momonosuke or a Bonnie. And then into like something like red, a 3k body means a lot, because, you know, red may run like vanillas that have like 4k, Robin has 4k attack, so you only need one more Dawn to pump him up to potentially threaten a swing. So just a really solid card. I wouldn't run him at anything less than 3. You could definitely run him at 4 if you wanted to. For our other 2-drops, I run 4 Killer. This card is so good at being letting you be greedy and also be defensive. So he's just a blocker, 2 cost, 2k blocker with a 1k counter. His effect is, when he has a Dawn under him, when he blocks something, if you have 3 or more characters on board, you get to draw a card. And this is really, really good, because what that lets you do is it lets you defend your board and also get advantage hand-wise. So he's basically a +1 if you can block with him with this effect on. He's also like a main target for like destruction effects, which can be potentially pretty useful. He'll usually get like Who's Who'd or Kinged and stuff like that. You want to be very careful placing him down. But yeah, he just he gets you a lot of value. I mean, he's 3 cost or less, so you could summon him off multiple effects in your deck that we're going to talk about later, but this card is just insane. And then to round out our 4-drops, our 2-drops, we're going to run 4 Scratch Mana Poo. This card is great. 90 to 95% of the time, I think it's just going to be a 2k counter, but this effect is actually pretty significant into like very niche decks that run a lot of events, like Croc and Blurple Croc. His effect is, when he has a Dawn under him, when he attacks, he rests one of your opponent's Dawn cards. And what that means for you is that usually they just can't play an event, right? So like, if I really wouldn't play this card into any deck other than, like, again, Blurple Croc, because you know for a fact Blurple Croc is going to play events, so you don't feel bad about playing this Apu. But into any other deck, you don't really know if they're going to be playing counter events, and even if you do, like, you don't even know if it's going to be worth it to set this down, right? But there are very niche situations where it might work, maybe against Kaido, because like they'll have like 1 open for Blast Breath, and that's pretty significant because it's a 4k counter, and he rests the Dawn before they can use... The reason why this card works is because when attacking effects happen before the blocker and the counter phase, so you attack, and then before they could even decide if they want to counter or not, you already have rested the Dawn. So pretty cool card, mainly going to be used as a 2k counter, but just a really solid one. Speaking of 2k counters, starting off at our 3-drops, we're running 4 Izo. Izo is great because he is a 2k counter with a great effect. On play, he's like Nekomamushi, where on play you're gonna rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less, and that's super significant because it's going to hit your blue matchup, which you kind of have trouble against, because you know Nekomamushi doesn't hit 4 costs, he only hits 3 costs, so you could just play the Izo, rest one of your opponent's 4 or less cards, and then like swing into it, use X-Drake maybe, so he ends up getting you a lot of value. Also, I'm going to show you guys some combos later that you can do with Blocker Law, but you don't really feel bad playing Izo because you could always pick him back up with 5 cost Law, which I will show you later. But yeah, just a solid card. And then of course we're running the brother, we're running the siblings. Okiku, she is just amazing, honestly. This card is one of your most important cards and plays on curve. She just says that when she has a Dawn under her, when she attacks, once per turn, you're gonna rest one of your opponent's characters that costs 5 or less. And that is insane. It's so significant because every single deck in format right now has something that you can, high value, that you can rest with Okiku. With green, you could pretty much rest everything in their deck aside from their top side. With red, it's the same thing. You're gonna rest most of them. Blue, you're gonna rest like most of them because they're 4 costs or less. And then even against purple, like their queens, their Black Marias, their blockers, their high cost blockers, you could just rest them with Okiku. It is an insanely aggressive card. It's great at dismantling boards. It just really does it all. And it's 3 cost or less, so that means that, you know, there's a lot of different ways you can summon it. She's just one of the most threatening cards on board. Usually the green player that has an Okiku stick, or like the first green player that has Okiku sticks, is gonna win the game because your opponent doesn't really want to play anything into while you have an Okiku on board, right? Because what can just happen is they play something, it swings back to you, you just rest it, you deal with it, and that's kind of the whole game. She's just an amazing card, honestly. I wouldn't run her at anything other than 4. And then finishing off our 3 drops, I run 2 Killer. Killer is great. On play, he's just gonna KO something. Just KO a rested character that costs 3 or less. This is really good into usually red and green. I don't think you have a lot of targets to do it with into like blue and purple unless you rest them yourself, so it's not really valuable, but especially in the mirror he's really good because he's gonna knock out these like the Okikus, so he's really awesome. I used to not run him in this deck, but he's really important because you can KO stuff for non-committal, you could KO stuff without committing to an attack while playing things like 5-drop Law or 8-drop Kid. And that's super important because I used to just run X-Drake, but this card is just so good because you could pick him back up, you could play him again, he's cheap, and there's a lot of things that he can hit, so just a really solid card. Oh, also, his trigger is play this card. So then like a lot of the time what can happen is like your opponent swings at you with like maybe like a ZORO or something, or even an Okiku. You take the life, you trigger it, you just play Killer for free, and then pop the thing that they just attacked with. Just a really solid card. So I wanted to, before I run a really hefty 5-drop line, but before I talk about any other card, I wanted to talk about Structure Deck Law. I don't see him run in a lot of decks, but in my opinion, he's one of the strongest cards in the game right now. He's a 5-drop 6k with 1k counter, and then he just says on play, set one of your Supernova or Heart Pirate type cards as active. So what that means is you can attack twice with a lot of your deck, a lot of your 5-cost cards in deck. This combo goes insane, honestly, because if you think about it, like if you have something on board already, you're basically playing a rush card, which in green doesn't exist. And that's one of the biggest weaknesses of green is your plays are so linear because whatever you have, like, it's what I kind of call like an honest deck. Like whatever is on board, you kind of know about, right? Like it's not like out of nowhere you're going to get hit with like a bunch of rush cards, except for this card. So not a lot of people are running it, so it ends up breaking a lot of ankles. There's a ton of every 5-drop card that I'm about to talk about has a combo with this structure deck law. It's just awesome. It's great for being more aggressive, taking board control. It just does it all. It's a rush. Like I like to think about it as a rush card that has a body attached to it. So it's just insane, honestly. And I'll leave him here because I'm going to talk about some of the cards that combo really well into him. One of my favorite combos that I like to do is him and X-Drake. So X-Drake just says, he's a 5-drop 6k. He just says on play, KO one of your opponent's rested 4 or less characters. So he's like killer, except it works with 1 cost higher. That might not seem significant, but it is because you have not the best matchup into blue, which runs like half of their deck is 4-cost cards. So this is going to be one of your more important cards. It's great into red too because it gives you a big body. And then also remember, added effect is this card, usually they won't use any effects on it. Like, you know, purple will destroy it and everything, but it usually won't get jet pistoled because they're saving jet pistol for something like 7-drop or 8-drop kid. So he'll dodge a jet, or Basil Hawkins, which I'm going to talk about soon too. So he will usually dodge a jet pistol because they're like, oh, you know, he's done his thing on board, that's it. And then like what ends up happening is you could like put Dawn on him, swing, and then play Law, and they were not expecting him to swing again. So he could just like sneak through a lot of board removal because of that. And it's just super important because, again, there's that element of surprise that they're not used to when playing against green. There are a lot of times where like I will get rid of someone's 8-drop kid because they think it's a safe turn for them to do so because I only have like an X-Drake on board. I'll just stack it with like 2 Dawn to go up to 8k swing, and then depending on what they do, like I'll just play the Law, restand it, you know, get a lot of value off. It's just insane what you can do with this card plus the structure deck Law. And then I also run, speaking of Law, 3 5-drop Law. You could definitely run this card at 4. It's so good. He's a blocker with 6k stats, and he just says on play, you could return a character on your board to your hand and then play another character that costs 3 or less. This is really important because a lot of your deck is 3 or less, and you want to be setting up for 8-drop kid anyway. But like, there's a lot of cool combos that you can do with this card. So like, for example, a lot like if you're on 7, a cool combo that I love to do into like either green or red is involving Nekomamushi and Killer. So like I had a play where like the red player just kind of played pretty passive, but they played a Nico Robin. So what happened was I played Nekomamushi to rest the Nico Robin, and then, you know, I played Trafalgar Law, picked up the Nekomamushi, and then dropped Killer. And that is a 10 Dawn play that you get for 7 Dawn. So it's so good, honestly. And you know, there are times where like against red too, like I'll just play Killer, and then, you know, on curve on 5, you just pick Killer back up, and then play him again to KO something else. Like, this card is insane. And then again, like with Ezos, like let's say you played Ezo like at the start of the game to deal with something. You could play Law, pick up Ezo, drop down something like an Okiku since she's 3 or less, and then now you have this really threatening board where like this Okiku is protected by this Law from attacks, and now you even have like a 2k counter in hand that you picked up from the board. So Law he's just an insane card, and even if he gets removed by like something like a jet pistol or he gets bounced back to your hand, he still gets his value off because of the fact that you could play something that's like more expensive. There's also like a lot of things you could do with like the search cards, and because you could play the same card that you put down, you could do stuff like, you know, play Bonnie, or like use Bonnie effect, pick Bonnie back up, player, rest her. Like that, it's an insane, it's an insane card effect, because then you basically grabbed, what you basically did is you played a blocker and then drew 2 cards, which is, I mean, that's better than Queen, right? Because then Queen you have to discard one. So just an awesome effect, honestly. Like, he is one of the best cards in the game, and honestly one of the best cards in this deck. Oh, also, I forgot, but he pairs really well with Structure Deck Law, because his stat line isn't bad, right? At 6k, like, you could swing, maybe bait out a 2k, or if you wanted to, attach 1 Dawn, swing at 7k, so they have to block with 2 cards. And then, you know, whatever they do, you could just play this Law, and then he restands himself, and he's ready to be blocked. He's ready to be a blocker next turn, so you don't lose that blocker status on him, and then you get a 6k on top of that. So it's just more combos with the Structure Deck Law. And speaking of which, one of the funniest combos, I think, is with Basil Hawkins. Hawkins is one of your best cards in the game for your green matchup. He just dismantles boards. He's a 5-drop 6k with the effect, when he has a Dawn under him once per turn, when he attacks and battles a character, he restands himself, and he's ready for another attack. This is so busted because he doesn't have to KO the thing that he's attacking into. So what people will forget sometimes is, like, let's say, I don't know, like they have like arrested Trafalgar Law or something, right? And I'm attacking into this with 1 Dawn at 7k, and then they'll 2k counter out of it, and then he just restands, and then you just do it again. Like, so you just ripped a card out of their hand for pretty much no reason. You know, and this happens like a lot too. And even if they don't have like another character you could swing into, like he gets a lot of value, because then if you stack the Dawn on him, he's swinging for life at 7k, which is such a great number, right? And then on top of that, he's also a 5 or less supernova, so he could potentially get 3 swings with Structure Deck Law. So sometimes I'll swing board, swing face, and then play Trafalgar Law, swing face again. So it's just super aggressive, just great for dismantling boards. Basil Hawkins, one of your best cards. The only thing that feels bad is when you play him into blue and it gets bounced back by Doflamingo. You don't really feel bad about when he gets jet pistoled, because there's more cards in your deck that you'd rather have on board than Basil Hawkins, right? But yeah, like into blue, I would argue maybe don't play him, but he's so good into blue too. So I don't know, it might be worth the risk. You just have to really like evaluate what they have in their hand. But yeah, one of the best cards in the game, Basil Hawkins. All right, so then starting off our top side, we don't have any 6-drops, but we do run 2 7-drop Kid. This card is so good into pretty much every matchup except for blue. The reason why he's really good is because he just dodges all removal aside from like Otama Pistol. And if they're Otama Pistoling this, that means that they're not going to be able, or they're less likely to Otama Pistol your 8-drop Kid. And that's super important, because 8-drop Kid is kind of what you're playing for in the end game. He can't get like 9-drop Kaido'd since he's a 7-drop. The only thing he could get is 10-drop Kaido'd or bounce by blue. Dofi can bounce him back to your hand, and Mihawk could bounce him to the bottom of the deck. Sables can bounce him to the back to your hand too. So I think into blue, he's a really risky play, to be honest. I wouldn't play him unless my opponent doesn't. I mean, there's really no situation where they don't have enough Dawn to play like a bouncer. So I mean, I would only play him if he's your absolute only play that you can do into blue. Otherwise, he's just in my hand as discard fodder for leader skill, because I mean, if you're spending, it's such a high cost card. Like, you're usually spending your entire turn to play him, and then you spend your entire turn to play him and he goes back to your hand, you just wasted a turn on like a huge swing turn, right? I'm a Dofi player myself, and what I've seen so many times is like newer players, they'll play 7-drop Kid, it'll get bounced back to their hand by Dofi, and they're like, okay, well, I got rid of their Dofi, right? Play it again, and then it gets like Mihawked to the bottom of the deck, and then now you're staring down at a 7-drop and a 9-drop, and you have not developed your board at all. So it's just really bad. I would not play this into any deck. I would not play this into blue, but into any other deck, this card is great. Oh, and I haven't even talked about his effect. Sorry, he's a 7-drop 7k, which is amazing stats. He's also a blocker, which makes his stats even better. And when he has a Dawn under him, at the end of your turn, you set this card as active. What this means is that you could swing with him during your turn, and if you put Dawn under him while you swung with him, which you're probably gonna want to do, right? He sets as active during your opponent's turn, so he can attack for big stats, and then at the end of your turn, set as active. He's now a big stat blocker, so he's just so good at controlling the board. I mean, like, the turn you play this against red is just a gruesome turn for them if they don't have Otama Pistol, so he's awesome. Like, he's with green, you want to make these like unbreakable boards, right? And then finally, our last characters that we play are 8-drop Kid. This is what you are playing towards. It's one of the most oppressive cards in the game. It's an 8-drop 8k, and his first effect is when he has a Dawn under him, if he's rested, your opponent cannot attack anything else but 8-drop Kid. And this is insane because a lot of the green cards get so much value for staying on board, especially like your cards like Jewelry Bonnie and Momonosuke. So like what ends up happening is like you're just sitting on this 8-drop Kid that's rested. They have to attack into this. They cannot attack into anything else, and you never get punished. You don't get punished for attacking with your goons. So then you just have like a full board that you're attacking out with and that you're swinging with, controlling the board, swinging at life. So he's just amazing. And then also his second effect is really good if you know, you already have like kind of established board. You could activate his effect and rest him, because you know you're not going to be attacking, you're not going to be swinging with him on the first turn you play him. He doesn't have rush. So to activate his effect, you could rest him, and then you get to summon a 3-cost or less, which is like half of your deck, and then you could just put a Dawn under him to get that Omni block effect. This is honestly one of the best cards in the game. Again, like, it only gets removed by Otama Pistol. It doesn't, it's an 8-drop, so it's not going to get removed by any bounce effects from blue. And then of course, like, it gets 10-cost Kaido'd, but I mean every card gets 10-cost Kaido'd, so but yeah, it's one of the best cards in the game. You're gonna want to make a board where like you have this and like other blockers on board, so that even if they do pump up cards to kind of deal with this card, you could just block, redirect the attack. You want to save your counters for the turns that you play this card, because you could just sit on this and take the whole game, to be honest. It's one of the best cards in the game, if not the best, but I think it's just one of the best cards in the game. Moving on to our events, I run 2 Paradise Waterfall. It's just a 2k counter that resets one of your characters as active, and the main combo that I like to do is with Kid. You could also do it with Law, but he's a 6k, so it doesn't work as well. What can happen is, like, if you have 8-drop and 7-drop Kid on board like this, they will usually want to be very Dawn efficient, and they will usually just like pump up something to 8k to swing into this. So what you could then do is rest Kid to block, and then after you rest it, you counter with Paradise Waterfall. It bumps up to 2k, so he's a 9k. He will block that 8k attack, and he'll restand himself for another block. So you get 2 blocks out of one huge statted blocker. It's just so good. You could also like mix people up. If you had like Jewelry Bonnie on the field that's rested, or like an Okiku that's not protected. If they don't swing correctly, you could just play Paradise Waterfall and then restand your Bonnie. They can't attack it anymore. They have to remove it with like a rest card or, you know, a pop card. So it's just, Paradise Waterfall to me is just really good. There's a lot of effects that you can use it with. And then my last counter event, I run Punk Gibson. I only run one because honestly, it's a very easy card to play around. Usually your opponent will just swing with anything that's 4 or less first. This effect is just, it's a 4k counter at 2 Dawn, and then you rest one of your opponent's characters that cost 4 or less. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention, Paradise Waterfall also has a pretty cool trigger which it works like X-Drake, where you just KO one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less. So again, like they swing with like a ZORO or something, you can trigger this if you want, kill the ZORO, non-committal, it's awesome. But yeah, back to Punk Gibson. The main reason why I run this card is just because like when you have Kid on the board, like it's kind of like, it's not really like a win more card, but it's like an ensure a win card, because then like you could counter something. Like they have to, with this card, they have to potentially go up to like 13k to deal with your Kid, right? Which is a huge ask, and they're not going to want to do that anyway because of the blockers. So it's really good. It defends. I mean, if they have like a 12 drop Kaido already, it defends against that as well. So it's just it's really cool. I only run it at 1. Its trigger is just rest one of your opponent's characters. It's just a solid card, but I mean, it could clog up your hand, right? And its second effect is very easily played around. And then lastly, I run 1 Straw Sword. This is mainly for the mirror, because the mirror is probably going to run 7-drop Kid as well. And there's 7-drop Kid is just so annoying to deal with. So I rather just play like something like Straw Sword and rest it, and then like go for 8-drop Kid and then have to deal with this later. Because this card is really annoying when 8-drop Kid is on the board. So I run 1 Straw Sword just mainly for that. I mean, of course it's useful in other situations too, but I mean, it's just going to be useful in all situations where you can rest something, right? This has no limit to what you can rest to. That's what's important. So you know, you could rest pretty much every character in the game. And then also it has a trigger to play a supernova type card with a cost of 2 or less from your hand. Less important. I mean, you could definitely do it. Play like a blocker or something like that if you really need to. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of the deck. Also, like this next part of the deck, or this next part of the video, I'm gonna be kind of talking about like what other cards you could run, why I'm not running them, and everything like that. But yeah, just let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys are running. I read all the comments. I love all your suggestions. And yeah. Alright, so this part of the video I just kind of wanted to use as like cards that I don't run, but you definitely can. This game is a lot of personal preference, so it really just depends on what you like and enjoy. So the first card that I see in a lot of people's lists is Raizo. His effect is just when attacking once per turn, if you have 2 or more rested characters, draw 1 card. It really just means 1 rested character, because when he attacks, he rests himself. So then if you have 1 more rested card on the field, he'll get his effect and draw. This is so good for being greedy into like your green mirror. I personally don't run him because I don't know, like I used to run him at 3, and then he didn't really feel good at 3. There's other things I want to run, so I bumped him down to 2, and then now it's 1. I just feel like he doesn't get a lot of value. He'll never stick, honestly. Like, so I end up just not running him, especially for like Kaido matchup. Like, he's just gonna die and everything. So, yeah, he's gonna be great in OP2 when you could like play him discounted, but for now I personally don't like playing him. But yeah, this card lets you be really greedy, so I could definitely see anyone running him. A card I wanted to talk about also is Beppo and Sachi and Penguin, but I mean, I don't have those cards with me right now. Sachi and Penguin, Peng Pirates, but they just play each other. They're just blockers that play each other when if you have the other in your hand. Beppo is just another 2k counter. In my opinion, the defensiveness of the deck is pretty good, so I don't really need to run more 2k counters than what I already have, but I could definitely see you wanting to run more. My friend, he cut out Paradise Waterfalls for Beppo's instead, so because he likes to curve out, which I totally get. So yeah, I mean, you could definitely do that. You could play him, he could play Penguin and Sachi. It's pretty funny. But other than that, I don't feel like I need more 2k counters in this deck. And then the last card I own is Arouge. Arouge is really cool because his effect is when he has a Dawn under him, he gets plus 2k power if you have 3 or more characters on the board. And this is cool because he gets up to 6k for 1 Dawn and 2 costs. He's basically like a 3-drop 6k. And this is so useful into like mainly purple, because he just baits out like all their 2k counters, and this effect is continuous. So it's not like you know, like Sanji, the 2k counter Sanji, where like you pump up his life or you pump up his attack, and then on your opponent's swing turn, like he's just a 3k. Like this is at least a 5k every time. So they're gonna have to invest like something like their leader hit to deal with this card. I don't personally run it just because I don't find the need to. I'd rather play things like Okiku in the early game anyway, and usually like he's just very awkward to play into some curves, and I don't like how you have to play 3 or more characters to get for him to be good, because, you know, like I get it, like Killer is really good because he's still a blocker, right? But then you're kind of forced to have a wide board, which you might not want to do sometimes. But nonetheless, like I've been testing him, he is fun, definitely playable, and if you guys wanted to try him out, no qualms about that. The last card I don't personally own, so I can't really show it. I'll show it on screen, but it's Yamato, and this is the card that I have the closest to putting in my deck. I think a lot of decks run her at like 1, and I think that's completely fair. Her effect is just, she's a 5-drop 5k, and her effect is just that she has double attack and she has banish, which is really funny, because what that means is when she swings you and if she hits you for life, you're losing 2 life, and they are both getting trashed instead of going to your hand, which is so funny because in this deck you have like a lot of cards in your hand to protect her, and you also have like a lot of cards that can rest chump blockers, so they have to have like big blockers to deal with her. So in the event that they just can't block the Yamato, they're probably just gonna lose the game, because losing 2 life and not gaining those cards in your hand is such a huge tempo swing for you. And then, like, you know, if the swing doesn't go through and you just have a hanging Yamato, you have things like Paradise Waterfall to restand her, you have blockers to protect her, you have so many cards to protect her. So it's just, she's a really funny card. If I owned her, I would run her at 1 or 2. But yeah, let me know what you guys are running. I read all the comments. I love seeing your guys' recommendations for the videos. And just remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We're trying to get to 1k by the end of the summer. And yeah, we're gonna have a lot more content, gameplay, deck profiles, and everything. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.